Haiti, October 2010, at a hospital in a small rural town north of the capital. These were the first victims of a horrific unknown disease in a country still reeling from a devastating earthquake. Patients were dying in the space of a few hours. Children were especially vulnerable. Al Jazeera was the first news channel on the scene. In the following days and weeks, we tracked the epidemic as it ripped across the country, leaving dozens, then hundreds, and soon thousands of Haitians dead in its wake. I'd reported from war zones for years, and from Haiti since the day after the earthquake.
They've received 43 bodies.
But this was a new disaster that shocked the world. Cholera had somehow arrived in Haiti. And it wasn't long before rumors that UN Nepalese peacekeepers were involved led us to a base on the banks of the country's largest river.
What are you digging? Why are you digging here? Well, we're not being told exactly what's going on here, but it certainly smells like sewage. There are toilets right there, and the liquid seems to be draining into this river just a few meters away that flows into the nearby town of Mirebalais.
Back then, it felt like we'd stumbled on the scene of a crime. Now, after a series of investigations, including by the UN itself, it seems that's exactly what did happen.
In the more than 2 years since we first visited this site, almost everything that we suspected from the scenes that we found now appears to be true. Scientists have said that the cholera found in that river is almost identical to a strain of the disease found in Nepal before those soldiers were deployed. Even Bill Clinton, the UN Special Envoy to Haiti, has said that UN peacekeepers from that base are the likely source of the disease in Haiti. But the one thing that hasn't happened is that the UN hasn't accepted any kind of liability for bringing the epidemic to this country. In fact, at this point, they still won't even talk about it.
It's been more than 2 years since cholera appeared in Haiti, and we're driving into one of the most isolated areas of the country. Communities up here in the mountains surrounding the Artibonite River are almost completely cut off from basic services. Clinics, running water, even roads here are almost non-existent. Up here, catching any kind of disease is a serious matter. One that kills as quickly as cholera can be a death sentence.
It is impossible, really, to imagine how somebody could get along paths like this to medical facilities within a few hours to save lives from cholera. This is the kind of scenario here. And the reality is that many of them don't, and we're on our way now to a funeral at the very top of this mountain for a man who didn't make it.
When he died from cholera, Farius Eugène was 64 years old. He was a leader of the community in this tiny mountaintop village and a father of 3. Farius fell ill just days ago. From his house, it's about 5 hours walk to the nearest clinic. Farius's neighbors say there have been around 200 cholera deaths in the area since the disease first appeared. As a UN helicopter flies over the funeral, we're told that nobody here has any idea how the outbreak started. As in many of the communities in this region where cholera is rife, death has become a part of everyday life. But that doesn't lessen the grief. Farius's coffin has been carried all the way up the mountain. His eldest son leading the way. They've been running for hours so that the burial can take place before dusk. In villages like this across the country, This is a scene that's been repeated thousands of times. Farius is the latest victim of a disease unknown in Haiti 2 years ago, but that's now a leading cause of death in the country.
Farius's death from cholera won't actually be counted in any official statistics. There are no Ministry of Health personnel who know about this or NGOs. This is just one example of how the death toll from this epidemic could be much higher than anyone knows.
In cemeteries dotted around the mountainside, the scale of this epidemic is easy to see.
So it's this one as well. Ça c'est cholera. Okay. Et ça ici.
Joseph Darius can't remember how many victims he's buried, but one in particular stands out in his memory: his sister.
M'dormi avec elle en Dakar là pour compte moi m'dormi ensemble avec lui pas de monde qui dormir ensemble avec moi parce que c'est ça qui me sensible pour lui parce que ça te pose mon problème ça porte mon chagrin pour jusqu'on y a là porte mon chagrin.
Outside the cemetery, cholera victims have gathered for a monthly meeting to discuss ways of dealing with the epidemic in their midst.
Mon Gabriel, non 7 jours entrer avec dans ce cimetière, l'autre bord puis autour 7 jours entrer avec lui. C'est tout à dit pour nous ta marcher là. Pour nous pas bouquer,
nous gain sur ça monde nous gain 90 qui fait choléra, mais pour nous dire ça qui mourent, faut nous dire même 30 qui mourent là-dedans.
Everyone at this meeting has either been infected with the disease or had a family member die.
So how many people here actually know somebody that's died of cholera?
As the meeting adjourns, we're told of an urgent new case. An elderly woman living close by who's in a critical condition. Saint-Hilaire Hilaire is losing strength fast. But her relatives are worried the journey down the mountain might kill her.
The sun is very bright at this time of day, so they were going to wait until later, but we've offered to give them a lift and drive them all the way down the mountain to the nearest cholera treatment center.
They decide to make a break for it, taking it in turns to carry her over the rice fields, along mud paths, to where the road begins. This is Haiti in the time of cholera. Communities living in fear. Each day, a new race for survival. Saint-Hilaire did reach the clinic before losing her strength, but in the end, it wasn't enough. A few weeks later, she succumbed to cholera, her body taken back home and buried in the mountains. While the death toll from cholera continues to rise, a new fight for justice has begun. Mario Joseph is the most famous lawyer in Haiti. He's won landmark victories for victims of political persecution. Today, he's collecting medical records. With very limited resources, Mario is representing thousands of Haitians who've been affected by cholera. It's the case of his life. They're trying to sue the United Nations.
United Nations have a lot of money we don't have. And they have a lot of 100,000 lawyers. We have only 12. The balance is for them. If they need to comply with the law, the balance is for us.
The lawsuit, filed in November 2011, claims that UN failures to screen its soldiers for cholera and follow international rules on waste disposal constitute gross negligence.
What are they doing? Are they gathering here?
Yeah, they're gathering here.
It's based on the UN's own investigation, which concluded that the Nepalese base leaking sewage into the river was a likely source of the outbreak. And it's composed of thousands of stories of personal loss, each one documented by Mario and his team. The next meeting is in Mirebalais, the town that's home to the UN base where the disease is known to have started. Henrietta Paul's husband was one of the very first to die. She doesn't know exactly where he's buried. Back then, the death toll was so high that bodies were being dumped in mass graves. Today, she and her daughter Lisette are filing a new claim. The family's only son, Fritznel, died 3 weeks ago from cholera. He was 34.
Ça fait mal moi-même parce que je perdu papa dans choléra, nous pas joindre. Petit frère me perdu encore après ça me perdu plusieurs d'autres familles. C'est monde qui c'est Fritznel Paul, c'est lui-même qui dépendait de nous, il mourit depuis nous là, il monde qui peut aider nous encore.
Back at their headquarters in downtown Port-au-Prince, the fruits of the lawyers' painstaking labor is kept in a dusty storeroom, still waiting for the day it will be used in court.
These are all the case files in here?
Yes, we got all cases, the first 5,000 file. Not only we fill the form, we notarize. They said we received the complaints. We will give you an answer on respond on due time. Yeah, I don't know when the reasonable time will be.
But it's been more than a year.
More than a year.
And you've heard nothing?
Nothing.
Faced with the UN's silence, the lawyers decided to expand the lawsuit, adding more names to the thousands who'd already filed a complaint.
UN have to respond. UN must respond, but they promote human rights. And we will continue to fight. Until they don't respond, we will file complaints for all people.
The 2010 earthquake killed more than 220,000 people. Those who lost their lives are remembered each year, with dignitaries from around the world coming to pay their respects. But for those who've died and continue to die from the cholera epidemic, there is no day of mourning. And even senior UN officials are staying silent on whether the victims' families deserve any compensation for their loss.
You've said the UN introduced cholera to Haiti. Do you think they should be liable for all of those deaths? There's nearly 8,000 people that have been killed.
That's a decision someone else has to make now. I think the most important thing is that the UN asked Paul Farmer to oversee the response. We've got the infection and mortality rate cut in half, and I think it can be contained, so I'm encouraged by that.
There's 8,000 people already dead, Mr. President.
What you can tell to the Haitian population 3 years from now.
Who should answer for those people that are already dead, Mr. President?
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Thank you.
Well, the ceremony's over and the cavalcade's now leaving, and we still haven't got any answers. Bill Clinton there saying it's not for him to decide whether or not the UN's liable, but he's actually said that the UN brought the disease to this island. So if he can't answer the question about accountability, it's not really clear who can.
Our next stop, UN headquarters in Haiti. Here, at least we'd be able to find out why Mario's clients had been waiting over a year for a response to their lawsuit. We'd been promised an interview with Nigel Fisher, the head of the UN mission in Haiti that's known by its acronym MINUSTAH.
Oh, hi, is that Nigel Fisher's office? Oh, hi, is that Nigel Fisher's office? Hi there, I'm trying to get through to Nigel Fisher's office. There doesn't seem to be anybody answering the phone now.
But it was proving difficult to get hold of him.
Hello, there's still no answer from Nigel Fisher's office. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. Okay, all right, well, I guess we'll just do what we can to try to catch up with him.
But just as we were about to give up,
this is Nigel Fisher. This is the man we've been trying to find all afternoon. It seems he's finally turned up, so we'll see if he's actually going to answer our questions. Do you remember me, Sebastian from Al Jazeera?
You're very deserving.
Nice to see you again. Very well, yeah, thank you. Sorry to keep...
That's all right.
We're trying to just get some of your time.
Day.
Yeah.
How long do you need?
I mean, we really needed as much time as possible, but it's been pretty difficult to try to get that. But can we ask you some questions now?
Sure.
Okay.
Let me dump this stuff.
Well, the one thing that we found difficult to talk to about with senior officials here is the question of liability. Nobody seems to be able to talk about that even. What is the position?
It's true. We cannot.
Why?
As an official here in Haiti and a civil servant,
right now I cannot speak about it.
Who can we get answers from?
Well, I think it has to be at UN headquarters.
In New York?
It is. I don't know whether you'll get an answer at this point, but the people who are reviewing this are at headquarters. They're in the legal department. They're working with the Secretary General's office on this.
We followed Nigel's advice. It seemed like the only way of getting any answers for the families in Haiti was to head to where all those decisions are seemingly taken. New York. But before we even arrived at UN headquarters, we got word from Mario's legal partners in the US that a decision had already been made.
They sent me an email shortly before they made the public announcement. They sent us an email with the letter.
What did it say?
The letter was one paragraph about how the UN was sorry about the cholera and the harm that it caused, several paragraphs about all the things they are doing to combat cholera, and then a paragraph at the end saying that they were not going to respond justly to the cholera victims.
Human rights lawyer Brian Concannon says he'd been expecting the UN would try to avoid paying compensation, but that the lack of any explanation caught him completely off guard.
It was also a slap in the face to the 660,000 Haitians who have contracted cholera and the 8,000 who have died so far, or at least their families.
The UN announced its decision to the world in a brief 5-minute statement. There was no official press conference, and since then, as in Haiti, there had been no further comment to the media.
Now, I've asked several officials who can actually talk to us inside this building, and the one person we've been told we can interview is a spokesperson for the Secretary General.
Claims found to be outside the scope of Section 29 of the Convention are not receivable. The consequence of a finding that a claim is not receivable is that the claim will not receive further consideration by the organization.
That statement was very brief.
It's a brief statement, it's a legal statement, and that's about all we're going to say on that.
But why is the claim not receivable?
Well, it's not the United Nations practice to discuss in public the details of or responses to claims against the organization.
So you don't have to explain yourselves?
No.
You're saying that not only do they not get compensation, but you don't even have to explain why?
Well, that's exactly what I've said. That's the United Nations policy.
What would you say to a family member in Haiti who has had somebody die as a result of this disease?
Well, I would basically say, as a UN employee or as a human being? As both. I would simply say, I'm really sorry about your loss. I'm really sorry that the cholera happened. We don't exactly know what the origins are, but we're working as hard as we can to address
everybody knows what the origins were. The scientific community is united.
Our panel told us that it was due to a confluence of circumstances.
Including being brought to Haiti, most likely by UN peacekeepers from
That's not what it said.
Wait a minute. So the UN still maintains that Nepalese soldiers weren't the most likely source of cholera in Haiti? We asked one of their own scientists.
The most likely source of cholera into Haiti was someone associated with the Mirabelais-Manousta facility.
Danielle Lantagne was one of the experts appointed by the UN to investigate the Nepalese base. They found a range of evidence pointing towards the UN peacekeepers, including that the type of cholera was very similar to a recent outbreak in Nepal.
Since the time of our report, our conclusions have been significantly strengthened. The Nepal strain of cholera was fully sequenced and compared to the Haitian strain. And when they did that direct comparison, it was found that of the 4 million base pairs in cholera, there was only one base pair that was different between the two strains. And in genetics, we consider that an exact match.
As far as we know, the claims that they are giving us are non-receivable, and that's under international law.
Stonewalled by this official, we decided there must be someone at UN headquarters who could explain the organization's decision.
We spoke to the press office.
Before security could shut us down.
Oh, here's Martin. Hey.
Eventually, we found a more senior spokesperson.
I mean, is there anyone else who can, because seriously, he was literally reading from a piece of paper.
It seems a little odd to me that you're interviewing me about the interview you've had with my deputy.
Well, we're trying to get answers, and he wasn't able to give any. He just said it's something that I don't have answers to.
Well, why do you think that it would be any different with me?
Is there anyone who would have those answers?
Sebastian, you've asked me that question 3 times now, and I think you know what the answer is. And I think it would actually be quite polite if you would switch this off now. Yeah, and don't you think? Don't you think that's...
Okay.
At every turn, the story from UN officials was the same. Outright refusal to accept any responsibility, yet a complete inability to explain why. It was the same from Haiti to New York, from those on the ground to those at the very top.
Mr. Secretary General, what explanation is there for the fact that there's no compensation being paid to the families of the victims?
I think I have made it quite clear the reason why this case is not receivable.
And was it your decision ultimately? Whose decision was it in the end?
Oh yes, it was my decision, but based on all careful consideration.
Do you think it's the right decision?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But for the families of the victims?
Why don't you talk to my legal counsel?
So you were saying there's no possibility at all of speaking with anyone from legal counsel?
Following the Secretary General's advice, I did put several calls in, but was told that the UN's legal counsel was unavailable for comment.
So we've spotted the Secretary General again in this room. We're going to try and catch him when he comes out. We haven't got access to the office.
Time, sir. Thank you.
So you said we could get access to the...
It's enough. It's enough. It's enough.
We haven't been given any access to the Office of Legal Counsel. Thank you. Thank you. We've just been told that the media office has said that they don't actually want us back in the building at all because of displeasure at the fact that we've been asking questions to officials in the hallways. They've said that we're effectively banned from filming in the United Nations complex.
On an intellectual level, the UN's rejection of our claims was expected, but on an emotional level, the UN's rejection is still very hard to take because you're left thinking about people in Bokazel who lost their child, the family in Sodo who lost the father and mother and are condemned to generational poverty, and you think that their chances of getting justice have been reduced.
Parce que nous avons longtemps souffert là. Réfléchis bien. En 2010, il y a un choléra arrivé 2013 là. Haïtien a mouru, Haïtien a diarrhée, ici c'est l'autre bord.
In Haiti, along with their sadness, the costs of burying their dead have left the family who we met with Mario and his lawyers severely in debt. Their son's grave is in a cemetery close to their house, but the death of the last male in the family has left them with no reliable income. They've just had to pull his 11-year-old daughter out of school.
Et puis là, voulait pour l'école, nous-mêmes nous pas gain comme l'école là pour nous payer l'école là et puis pour direction l'école pas recevoir pour nous sans comme côté de l'école là. Ouais, ça fait nous mal. Ça fait nous mal en pile.
The UN's decision hadn't even been made when we first met this family, but it seemed they had a sense of what was coming.
Et ministère lui-même, même l'elle connaît l'elle fait, il a toujours plaidé dit non, pas de faire, parce que le peuple là, lui-même, son peuple, un petit peuple grand goulier, il est en connaît reste manger ministère bien, la journée pour manger, c'est tout normal, il capable pas révoler contre lui.
Apart from anger over compensation, what may be more worrying to officials back in New York is the lasting damage in Haiti to the reputation of an organization that's supposed to stand for justice and equality around the world.
C'est pas un bagay cap jam pour haïtien, jam camper pour dire remet ministère. Même les dédommages, les pas jam haïtien pas jam finir remet honnête non. Il doit pas remettre même si frère mourir dans choléra. C'est tout normal, moi-même m'attraper choléra tout. Il doit pas remettre ministère. Parce que ça a fait mal.